Hello, welcome back to American Soccer Quick Kicks. I'm your host, David Wright. I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas. As we get ready to end this year, I want to give you this very special episode. You probably met Jason Robertson in our previous video, and I wanted to have him back in order to share his story with everyone because it is one that can be truly inspiring and encouraging to a lot of people. And soccer has played a consistent thread throughout his entire life. I just want you to hear what he has to say because it's pretty impressive. The plan is for me to launch a dedicated American Soccer Quick Hits YouTube channel starting in January. So look for that, and I'll put a notice out on this channel too, so everyone can find it. And my videos will continue to be 15 to 10 or 15 minutes in length. The whole point that I'm trying to do is make things very brief. Of course, with these last two episodes, I've had people on, we've interviewed. When that happens, it'll go longer. And this one is absolutely worth the half hour if you'll just listen to what Jason has to say. So I hope everybody has a happy new year. Look for me on my new channel starting in January, where again, we'll be doing 10 or 15-minute videos. So that's all the introduction I'm going to give here. The rest is handled in my interview with Jason. So please watch this and enjoy it, and let me know what you think about it in the comments. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year. Welcome back, everybody, to American Soccer Quick Kicks. My name is David Wright. Once again, I have with me my friend Jason Robertson. I had him on the last show, and we'll have him back again today because his story is actually amazing, and I wanted to spend a little bit more time digging into that and sharing it with you because I think I've told him this week, he's got a gift for inspiration, and I think he can really be. I'm messing up. I'm going to start all over again.
That's fine. That's fine.
This is why I have the trim tool on the video. Okay, we'll start over. Welcome back, everybody, to American Soccer Quick Kicks. I'm David Wright. I have with me once again Jason Robertson. I invited him to come back on the show this time because I want to spend a little bit more time with him and on his story and what his plans are for the near future. And I think that it can prove to be inspirational to a lot of us. And his story is really amazing. Like I said before, he and I met through soccer, and we were teammates in high school. And we, I guess we kind of lost touch for a few years after high school, but then reconnected, and I learned some more stuff about him that just really kind of blew me away. His story actually ties into a key part of American history. And I think his story is actually something that can inspire all of us. So Jason, welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you, bud. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to reunite with friends.
Well, I tell you, the 1986 World Cup was the first World Cup I was aware of. I heard people talking about it, including friends of ours that we have in common, like if you remember, like Chris Wolf and folks like that. And I ended up, believe it or not, playing in a pickup game of soccer with them one time, which seems rare in this country. But it was probably the fall of '86, and had a good time with them that afternoon. A bunch of friends. I think Alan Scoggins was in that group too. And they encouraged me to go out for our high school team the next year. I had missed the freshman season, which was the first year we ever had it in our school. And so the spring of '87, I go out there, scared little skinny kid, never really played soccer in my life. But I had a burgeoning love for the sport, and Jason, you were in a stratosphere I couldn't even see you. You were not only one of the stars of our team, but you were a featured star on the travel team there in our hometown. And so you were extremely gracious, and my first impression of you is extremely positive because you were the one guy that I didn't already know who made the effort to come out and extend me a friendly welcome and make me feel at home on the soccer field, even though I probably didn't have any business being out there. But even though I didn't play a lot, which I didn't deserve to, I enjoyed my time a lot on the team, and it was because of the camaraderie and the connections and the new friends I made. And you were absolutely at the top of that list. So I just wanted to share that with you, that I appreciate how you worked me that very first day of practice in the spring of '87. But I'm taking up all the airtime. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, and why don't we just start with I alluded to the fact that your story actually touches on a key part in American history. Share that with us, and also just share with us the importance that soccer, the important role that soccer has played in your life.
Awesome. Well, thanks, David, for the opportunity. First of all, America is one of the greatest countries in the world. I always say that not just because of the freedoms, but more specifically because of the opportunities. There's a lot of countries that people say, "Oh, there's a lot of free countries." Yes, there are, but how many countries have the opportunities that America has? And that's really what separates America. And that's the one thing I always key in on is opportunity. When I first came to the country, I was, believe it or not, I was one of the Vietnam airlift babies before the fall of Saigon. And Fort Benning, situated right next to Columbus, Georgia, was my avenue of how I got to the area. And I was adopted by a local family and just very blessed from day one just to be able to be adopted in the community. A lot of things, David didn't really know this, but I actually transferred to Hardaway that year of '87. So I only spent my last couple of years at Hardaway. I wasn't there to begin with. But soccer has always been very instrumental in helping me with my self-esteem, my identity, and who I was. And obviously, when you transfer to a new school, and the only people I knew were a couple of guys that I had played travel soccer with. Other than that, Hardaway was a brand new area for me, and I was had to make friends all over. But because of the lovely game of soccer, something that is I want to talk about a little bit more has always been a trend of just developing friendships. It helped me become, as you can imagine, being an orphan from a country that America was at war with. A lot of people weren't fond of that war, obviously. One of the key factors of that contributed to that, really, honestly, was because Vietnam, it's a history fact for people, was the first televised war in America. So that's the reason it got such bad publicity, because people got to watch it and got to form their own opinion. You know, the Korean War is often talked about as the forgotten war. Well, simply forgotten because nobody knew about it much. You didn't have the publicity that Vietnam did. So having to deal with that as a kid growing up here in the South, my adopted parents were white, so I already didn't feel like I fit there in their family. Then I went to school, a private school, and most of the kids there were white. So the first sport I remember actually playing, believe it or not, wasn't soccer. It was American football. And about 8 years old, recess, one of the kids was like, "Man, this kid's quick. No, we need to get him playing football with us." So I said, "Well, you got to talk my adopted mom into it because I've never played an organized sport." And I remember to the day he literally followed me to my car and met my adopted mom and said, "Man, you got to let my friend play football with us. We need more players." And all I knew, I didn't know anything about it that much, is I remember the first practice, the coach said, I said, "What do you need me to do?" He goes, "Well, let's just try you at running back." He handed me the ball. And fortunately, at that time, I was pretty quick. And all I knew is I didn't want to be tackled. So I just ran right through the line. Next thing I knew, I was in the end zone. And the coach said, "He's going to be our running back," just like that. So it was exciting. But I'll never forget, we had a church picnic several after that season had ended. And a guy was a missionary, and he was from England, of all places. And this is as you can imagine, this was middle school, not even quite middle school, but I was not 10 or 11. And he said, "I want to show the kids a sport that's not very popular here yet, but it will be." So you have to imagine, this is the early 80s before David preluded to the 86 thing. This was like 1980. So he brought out a round ball. At first, I thought it was a volleyball or something, because it was a church picnic. And believe it or not, it was at Lake Bottom, those that are familiar with the area. And he began to show us some things about how he juggled it a little bit, and then he showed us how we should pass it, and he set some little mini goals, and it was foreign to me. I just had no idea, how do you do this with your feet? But because of my natural athleticism with football, I was like, "Well, I can pick this up. I'm quick, I'm fast." And so as soon as I could, I ran to the ball, kicked it in front of me, and most of the kids couldn't catch me because I just ran off with it. Thing was, I didn't have any skill because I'd never played. But for me, it was kind of like keep the ball away from everybody else, because I didn't know. I was thinking of American football. We used to play tackle the man with the ball. So I was kind of doing that with a soccer ball. But he taught us a few things, and next thing you know, my parents were like, "You need to try soccer." Um, Fortunately, they looked at my size. Here I was going into fifth, sixth grade, smallest kid in the class. Didn't weigh hardly anything, and they were getting worried about me getting hurt playing American football. So they said, "You need to play this sport." And that's where soccer began for me.
So it's interesting. I mean, I just want to emphasize that is, despite being Vietnamese born, you were American raised.
That's
Right?
correct.
Soccer was just as foreign to you as it
Oh,
was
yeah.
to any American around you there in Alabama and Georgia.
especially here in the South where college football reigns. I mean, it's football, 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 and then there's baseball, and then basketball. That's really how the order is in the South. It's football, baseball, and then basketball most of the time. So, yeah, that's I didn't even know soccer existed. To be honest with you, and then we didn't really have. We only had believe it or not, this is make us sound old here, David, but we only had one TV in the house. So I'd never seen soccer on TV. So I just have seen American football. In fact, the only team I really watched at the time was the Atlanta Falcons.
Mm.
So I knew a lot about football, but I didn't know anything about soccer. But
Well,
I go ahead.
let me ask you this. So tell me, I mean, obviously, you say you grew up with an awareness that you were from a foreign country that America was at war with,
Listen,
and obviously with an awareness that you look different than your family, your parents. Um, how comfortable or uncomfortable did you feel like you fit in? And was that mainly something that you internalized, or was that something you were experiencing in interactions with people?
it was a mixture of the both. I actually was very fortunate that my parents, put me in an environment that was very somewhat positive. But if you grow up, and I'll just be honest, the private school they sent me to was in Phoenix City, Alabama, is across the river. If people that don't know about Columbus, we live in a border city uh, between Alabama and Georgia. So it was, I'll just be honest, it was an all white private school. So I used to joke around, say I was the brown spot in the hallways. I mean, you couldn't miss me. So yeah, it was a little different trying to fit in and trying to figure out, okay, I don't look like these people, but I just had to make do with what I could. And I think soccer really saved me because I noticed something about American sports. If you're good at a sport, people could care less where you come from, what color you are. If you're helping the team win, that's really not even a matter, or even a question. And so I said, well, if I can excel in this sport, people will like me. So I put every effort into it. And I'll be honest with you, David, my first experience of soccer, my parents signed me up. It was a rec team. Uh, there it was girls and boys on the team. And I was coming from American football that I played 2 seasons. I loved it. For us, that's the macho man boy sport. And my parents had to talk me into soccer. I was like, I'm not going to girls playing. I don't want to touch that. And believe it or not, the first practice I ever went to was a girl that was just took the ball and dribbled right by me. And I literally was about ready to, you know what? I'm not playing this sport. If girls can do that easy, this isn't for me. But you know what? It drove me so much that I wanted to improve that I didn't want her to ever beat me again. That I ended up that first season have never played. I got the most improved player award that season at the end of that season at 10 years old.
Okay.
And I played one more season of rec. Then after that, it was travel ball for the rest of my journey. I never played rec again.
Well, you must have taken off. I met you in '87, and you were already running circles around everybody out there on the field.
Well, I was very fortunate. Speed had a lot to do with it. We didn't have some of the best technical. We can talk about that more about soccer later, maybe on another podcast. But training. But so athleticism was something that really this is what saved me. Just being very athletic, and I
Well,
learned a little bit about control afterwards. But I think that goes in line with kind of with the U.S. We can talk about it another time about the U.S. soccer. It reminds me a lot about that.
I mean, I think you downplayed a little bit of kind of your dramatic rescue from the streets of Saigon. I mean, I guess we can
Yeah.
only imagine the details. You could have literally been an abandoned baby on the street, right? While soldiers are running to a helicopter,
Yeah,
and
but you
you're
got. I'm glad you brought that up because I think soccer, soccer, soccer. But you're right. My real story is how fortunate I was. Is most of the children in the middle of the war, especially children like me, they're considered to be Amerasian, which means half American, half Asian. Most of the time, our dads were soldiers that didn't even know they even had us. They had a Vietnamese woman pregnant, and because of the way the country was set up, in the middle of a war, these women didn't even know who the father was. The orphanage was usually where most of us ended up. So for me, being a young age, most likely from what I was told by the caretakers, every morning they go to the gate and there would be a couple more kids sitting at the gate, the orphanage, and they just bring us in. You have to realize we had no names, no identity, no paperwork. So they basically had to guess about how old we were, and they made up just fake names for us there in the orphanage. So to this day, I still don't know my exact date of birth, and I've never met my original parent, my biological parents. Uh, and it's America. The reason I talk about how blessed we are in America is they didn't realize that one of the reasons too that my biological mom had to get rid of me, not just because of the other stuff, but in the country of Vietnam, is if you weren't 100% Asian, they didn't want you there. And she knew that if she kept me, that she would have a harder time raising me there in that country just because of the color of my skin. I was too dark to be considered 100% Asian. So people complain about America sometimes, but they don't realize other countries, there's a lot more issues that come into play. But she just the love that she had, that she wanted the best for me and for my life. I didn't always see that as a kid. It took a while, took into my adulthood, really, honestly, to overcome the feelings of being abandoned and rejected. But you have to understand too, I felt rejected not just from my own parents, but from the country that I was born in. But if you really look at it, David, really Vietnam was just a birthing place. It's really not my country. Like you alluded to earlier, America really is. I'm an American. I was naturalized. It took 5 years. There's a process here in this country, but my parents went through the process. So I didn't really become an American until I was like 9 or 10 years old almost. But I became one because they went through the process and the paperwork. So when people say Vietnam and the war, yes, that's where I was birthed. But like anybody else, David, we don't choose our parents. We don't choose the country we were born in. But what we do afterwards is what's really important.
Well, I know that, just the circumstances of your birth and your rescue, I guess rescue is the right word, from Vietnam to America, your adoption by a family there in the Columbus area. Um, you're already dealing with a lot. Just having the awareness, I suppose you were aware of all this at a young age, and that's probably a lot for a young boy to have on his shoulders. And when I knew you in high school, you seemed to have it all together.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I do know, and this is what I want to get to is you I don't know if you consider it in these terms, but as far as I'm concerned, you have a ministry, and your ministry is reaching out, encouraging people and inspiring people, because your story is inspirational, not just because it happened, but because how you've handled it. And I know you've had a couple of different periods in your life of hardship, and you've also emerged victorious. And I'd like for you to give us a little bit of time. Tell us a little bit about you know your struggle. What was life like just after high school?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I actually coach soccer to high school kids. And one of the biggest things one of the phrases they'll hear me say from the sideline all the time is like, how do we respond? How do we respond? Because we usually what will happen is something in the game will happen that's negative that they didn't plan for. Or got scored on, or but it's specifically a player. And I'll look at the player and goes, okay, that just happened. How are you going to respond? And that's why I love coaching, because soccer and any sport, it parallels with life. It's how we respond. David, there's things that we don't control that happen to us. And we have to figure out, okay, it happened. Sometimes it happened because we did something, like on the field. But sometimes it's just because the opponent presented us with something or a challenge that we weren't expecting. And now it's up to us on how we respond. So I really feel like a lot of times, once I realize that in life, that, okay, a lot of things are out of my control, but how am I going to respond? And that can be with the attitude, uh, appreciation for the things around me. But when you take that focus off of just like what happened to me and begin to focus more on how do I respond to that, I can respond being appreciative of the people around me, like the soldiers that came to my orphanage, that benefited us, brought food, medicine, things they didn't have to do. For them, it wasn't politics. They just saw kids that needed stuff. And then the lady that rescued me, named Betty Tisdale, that lived in Columbus for a while, she brought me over. And then I had to respond to what it's like being in a new family, a new home. So a lot of life, really, David, honestly, at the end of the day, is our response to life. Even though people say you got to live it and live these ways, but Hardaway was another example. When we met at the soccer fields, soccer was my identity. I mean, people there knew me because of soccer, so I really kind of hid behind that. I didn't really let people know that I was really still an insecure kid. I was very shy, but man, David, when I got on the soccer field, that's the one place I could shine, and I didn't have to worry about anything else. I didn't have to worry about being accepted because I already knew, hey, I'm a starter. People were looking up to me to be the part of the team that they needed. So
Well,
that's
let
where.
me just sing your soccer praises here real quick, and I'll let you continue. But just so folks understand, our team was awesome. Um, we varsity soccer in public high schools in Columbus was brand new at this time. I think '86 must have been the first season ever in
Mhm.
its school history. '87 was when Jason and I met, and I guess it was our both of our first years playing for the team.
Yep.
Uh, there were only two or three really good, legitimately good soccer teams in our region that we played on our schedule. We were one of them. Now, I can say that with all modesty because I had nothing to do with our quality. I was the best bench captain in the city, maybe. I'll claim that. But the guys that we had on the field playing, um, had played together for our core group had played together for years, right?
That's correct.
Y'all had been playing already together. I don't know how much our coach knew about the sport. We had players that already knew what to do. Jason was absolutely one of the shining stars of the team, and it's what took us, if not into the title game, is certainly into the playoff mix every single year. So I want people to understand, not only was Jason a good player on our team, he was one of the elite players in the city and drove us either to championship games or right to the brink of them, depending on how the playoffs went. So I just want people to understand you weren't just good at soccer. You didn't just like it. You were actually a brilliant player. So please, I understand everything you're saying about that was your identity and you were comfortable in the field because you knew you had everybody's respect out there, and that's absolutely true. But I just wanted to let people understand that context. So please, go ahead.
Well, thanks for accolades. I just looked at it as everything progresses. Soccer obviously was still pretty new, and I was fortunate to have been on a travel team through since I was 11, 12 years old up until high school. So I did have an edge, an advantage that a lot of kids didn't have. I look back now and I see the kids that I'm coaching, 9, 10, 12 years old, that have the access to the better coaching. So obviously, as things, just like with technology, everything improves. I mean, today's game is so much faster, and so many more kids are at the same level. And it was easier. I'm just being honest. I'm not trying to be humble, but it was easier back then to be one of the better players because not everybody had the access to the training, or even travel soccer was so new in Columbus. Like you said, I mean, there was only one travel team per age group. And I happened to be on the very first travel team ever established in Columbus, Georgia. And so everything after that, so everybody below me. So believe it or not, Dave, that's interesting you say that. I was actually the only kid from the original travel team that was actually on Hardaway. The other travel kids were on the team older or younger. I mean, so it's not like I actually got to spend a lot of time playing with the same guys that were on the team. I think so that says a lot too. We would scrimmage against each other, but I got to represent just the team of my age group. Everybody else went to a couple other schools like Shaw and Kendrick. They were spread out. So
Okay. So tell me, how did soccer continue to play a role in your life after graduation? And and what again? What did you have? Were you having any other, I guess, difficult times, whether in terms of your identity? Were there identity issues? Was there a faith issue? Or can you give us a little bit of what was going on, and maybe in the early '90s there in that stage of your life?
yeah, I mean, after high school, I was fortunate enough. There was a local college there called Columbus College before they became Columbus State University. They had a soccer program, men's program. And so they offered me a scholarship to stay close nearby and play, and I did that. I got to play pro indoor for a season on a local indoor team. But soccer, as I really think about the game itself and the opportunities it provided me off the field, are actually greater. I might have had the limelight a little bit when I was playing the game, but as far as off the field, the connections, the friendships, including yours, most of my lifelong friendships are soccer buddies. I mean, the ones that I've stayed connected with my whole entire last 30, 40 years, they're soccer related. The impact soccer's had on me after I got out of college, I was already done. I was just out at the fields doing some private training for kids because of my reputation town. They were, parents were like, "Hey, can you train my kid?" And that's there was a pickup game you talked about. It was a little more popular once we got out of school, and I just remember once again, I'm picking up, and there's only one other female on the field playing scrimmage with all the guys, and happens to be my wife. At the time, I didn't know it was going to be, but I met my wife at the soccer fields in a pickup game, and here we are. This April will be 28 years that we've been together ever since. So the best things that ever happened to me happened at the soccer field, not just the playing the game, but in the relationships and meeting my wife. Now that I'm coaching, I get a chance to impact kids for the better because I'm the kind of coach that really likes to do parallels with life, like the response thing I was telling you about, making decisions, preparation. Every chance I get when I'm coaching, especially the high school kids, is asking them, how does this relate to your life? Give me examples of how soccer can translate to what you're doing in your personal life right now. So it's been a blessing, David. I'm telling you, and it's been my refuge at times when there's been some hardships in my life personally. I was able to go to the field. I have actually actively stayed playing soccer in the adult league up until last year. So I've been playing soccer actively for almost 40 years and never stopped. So until the last season, until I took a break, just because I'm coaching a lot. But those guys, like when times were hard and just needed a break, there's one place I could always go. Even in my 40s, now I'm almost 52 this year. I could go to soccer field and once again just get on the field, kick that ball, and
Mhm.
just forget about everything else going on in life.
Do you want to tell me a little bit about Rice to Grits?
Sure. Well, actually, I'm kind of going to rework. I actually did about 15 years ago. I wanted to write my story and journalize it. So I did a self-published. So it's probably sold about it's about 7,500 copies. Just didn't really market it too much. But I'm actually working on a rewrite of that right now, actually. So it's a little more updated version. A lot's happened since then with family and kids, as you can imagine when you're young. I was a young father at the time, we just only had two children, three children at the time of the writing, and a fourth one came after I finished it. But just the relationship my wife and I have has grown tremendously since then too. So I feel like a rewrite, a better version of that book is probably going to come out sometime later next year.
Well, I tell you, every time I talk to you, even in just casual settings, I never fail to come away feeling inspired. Like it's you have an admirable spirit. Like the your approach and attitude toward life, I think, is a beacon and a good example that everybody could benefit from. I know that you are. You have this. You shared with me that you have this burden to be an encouragement to others, and uh, and that you feel like you have a lot to offer in that area. One reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is kind of give you an opportunity to share that burden and share maybe what your plans are, because I'd love to give you the floor there.
Yeah, I just because of my own life, you never know. A lot of people ask, it doesn't matter what your faith is. Most of us are going to believe there's a divine being that's orchestrating a lot of stuff. So whatever that means to you, but for me, it's like, how do you see a divine being? You can't really. I mean, I've never seen God. I don't know anybody ever has, but we see him through other people. See, God was there when those soldiers came to my orphanage, brought us food and medicine. God was there when the lady reached out her hand, picked me up off the street, and brought me inside the orphanage. See, I didn't see God personally, but I could see his love and actions through other people. So that's how we see God. We see God through other people, David. We see God through our friendships, through our family. And it's just amazing that when I look back on my life and all the relationships that I formed, and most of them through soccer, it's that example of God, especially my wife. I mean, she's been the perfect example of love unconditionally, just being there for me no matter what. But so encouragement for me has always been somewhat of a natural, just because I've never wanted other people to hurt like I hurt when I was a kid. I've never wanted people to feel alone. I've always wanted to say, hey, you're not alone in this. And I think that's the biggest thing a lot of people do not realize sometimes is that they're going through a circumstance and they feel like I'm the only one that's going through this or the only one that's ever been through that. And it's kind of cliche to say we know that's not true, but when you're in that spot, it is so easy to feel like you are the only one that's ever been through something. But it's those moments that when God will use someone, and a lot of times, David, it can be a complete stranger, knows nothing about you, um, and they can just say the kindest word, and it will just lift your spirits. So I make it a point every day. I mean, I'm at the gas station, I'm at the store, grocery store. I just simply say hey to people. Somebody at the register. It doesn't matter. I want that cashier to feel special just for the moment, just to feel noticed. Dave, it's not even need that. It's just people like to be noticed and appreciated. Just saying thank you to the most simplest thing, the waitress. So yeah, my whole life is I feel like it's just I want to be encouraging to other people because I know what it's like to feel like there is no hope in this world sometimes, and to feel like you've been abandoned. I mean, of all people, I was abandoned. And I felt rejected not just by my adopted parents, but by the country I was born in. And there are often times I didn't feel accepted here in America until soccer came along. But and it's one of my gifts. I want to leave people better off than when they met me. My godmother told me one time when I asked her what does success mean to her, and she basically said, "Jason, how many people are better off because you lived? That's the true meaning of success." And that's stuck with me. I mean, she's been passed away for 5 or 6 years now, but I'll never forget her telling me that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make that my life. The rest of my life, I want to live that way. That when people meet me, they're better off because they have met me. They're not worse off, but they're better off. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a long, testimony or anything. It should be simply just saying, you know what? I really enjoyed meeting you today. And I hope that God let them know that God loves them just as much as He loves me and loves you. And I keep it simple. Faith is something that's personal for every one of us. But
Man, that's awesome. We're winding down a little bit on our time here, but do you want to get into a little bit of what your plans
yeah,
are, maybe along those lines for next year?
speaking of that, just because I've finally passed the threshold of 50, I think I've had a lot of time the last couple of years to start reflecting, and you really get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm 50 years old. What have I accomplished? How did I get here so fast? And you go like, wow. And then realization of I have less yesterdays than I do tomorrows. And you start really thinking, man, I don't have a lot of time. I mean, when I say that, it's not like, okay, I'm gonna die tomorrow, but we really don't know how much more time we have. But to know that I'm on the second half of my life or the third or whatever it may be, but I'll be honest with you, David, if something happened to me today, I can honestly say that I feel like I've lived on borrowed time. I mean, the circumstances I endured through the orphanage, I wasn't supposed to survive that. The fact that I got airlifted before the fall of Saigon, who knows? I mean, there's so many kids that didn't make it out. And I've often asked, even God, even my prayers, like, God, why did I survive? Why did I make it out? Yet I made it out and still haven't met my biological parents. So what's my purpose? Why am I here? So when I got to 50 just a couple of years ago, man, it really hit me. Those same questions began to come back. And it's like, why are we here? And are my best days behind me? Or are they ahead of me? What else do I have left to contribute to this life? So I want to start a podcast, and it's going to be real simple. It's just going to be called Men My Age. Of course, people are like, well, what is that age? It's kind of neat because I really am a true 007. I don't know my real birthday. But when I say men my age, I'm thinking pretty much 40 to 60, kind of a 20-year range there. Because I know what it's like to just pass the 40, and I felt like I just turned 40, and next thing I know, I'm 50.
No kidding.
So if it went that quick, next thing I'll turn around and say, I'm going to be 60.
I know it.
So I want to kind of hit that range of people and engage in conversations with people like you, David, from all walks of life, and say, how did you get to where you're at? And there is hope. In fact, I'm going to share this before I get off this. I actually talked to a girl from high school today. She just turned 50. I sent her a message on Facebook. We were friends in high school, and I hadn't really talked to her in 4 or 5 years. But when people turn 50, you kind of want to at least say, "Hey, happy birthday! This is something. It's a special birthday." And so I reached out to her and said, "Hey, haven't talked to you in a while. Just wanted to wish you a happy 50th. Welcome to the 50s." It's kind of a little laugh emoji, but she sent back and said, "Well, this is what I'm doing now." She says, "I'm actually in nursing school."
Wow.
And she goes, "But the inspiration I'm giving these older ladies around me that I'm going back to school to do the career that I never got to do, it's just amazing." And she says, "Thank you so much for reaching out to me today just to find out how I was doing and how my life was." And so I want people to understand that, yeah, we're 50. Our life's not over. I mean, there's plenty of us out there that maybe have to find a second career. We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty, in our last few years. We want them to be good. We're in that stage, David. We're looking at our parents going, oh, wow, they're aging. We're going to be right behind them soon. And yet at the same time, we're taking care of the kids that we've been blessed with. So it's definitely an interesting phase of life to be in.
Well, in the state of the world and in the state of our country, men can definitely use encouragement, and just to hear other stories alone can be enough to encourage men. So I think I'm happy that you're doing it because I know that you have a real gift to be able to reach hearts that way.
Thank you, David.
Have you, well, look, whenever you're getting ready to launch it, whatever I can do to help you, you know that I'm just a text or a phone call away. I'll do whatever I can for you. Man, it's such a privilege to be able to call you a friend. And it is amazing to hear how a silly game like soccer, you just kick the ball around your feet, can have such a integral impact in every aspect of your life for your entire life. And your story just never fails to blow me away. And again, your spirit, I just find admirable. And it's a pleasure talking to you. And I hope that you've enjoyed your couple of guest appearances here on the show. And I'll call you back whenever we got anything good to talk about.
It's always a pleasure to sit down with a friend, buddy.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Appreciate you, David.
All right.